Hey guys, welcome back to the Jay's Fifth Down Podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and today we're going to be talking NFL action here as we're getting ready to get into the postseason. Got one more week left in the regular season. A few good games on yesterday's matchup there, and especially with the Falcons and Commanders ended out on Sunday Night Football. We'll get into that a little bit later, but thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and like and share all that stuff. Comment your thoughts. We're going to be talking about Vikings and the Packers game, which was a very good contest, like I expected it to be. It might be a possible playoff matchup at some point. I'm not sure. It just depends on how some things shake out to end the season. But overall, it was a good day of football yesterday, and got to see a lot of good performances. Throughout the day yesterday. So we'll get into that. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Check us out here, Jason Down on YouTube. Also, we're on TikTok and Instagram and X. So make sure you follow us there and for all, updates and everything and to get reels, all that good stuff. So make sure you do that. Take care of that for me. And now, like I said, let's get into it. So the game that I was really watching yesterday, or I was paying a lot of attention to was the Vikings and Packers matchup which the Vikings ended up winning 27-25, and they were leading at one point. Sam Darnold threw for over 360 yards, and like a couple of touchdowns. He had a really good game, and they had it picked, but had a good game overall, and getting other guys involved, right? Clearly Justin Jefferson is your go-to guy, but he did a good job of spreading the ball around the offense, and getting it to Jalen Naylor had a really good game. He's an underrated receiver, that works in that Minnesota offense under Kevin O'Connell, and of course Jordan Addison, we all know he's very talented and very good receiver, picked up in last year's draft by the Vikings, and just to help take that pressure off Justin Jefferson, because they knew at some point, like, hey, we're going to be contending, at some point, and we're going to need to find other options as, once we get into the playoffs, teams are going to lock in on Justin Jefferson. They're going to double team, they're going to triple team, they're going to bracket off coverage to him. So we need to find guys that can take some of that pressure off of Justin. And, Jordan Addison's a great person to do that. He had a great game, and like I said, Jalen Naylor, TJ Hawkinson had some big catches. Overall, the Vikings played really well defensively. I'm a little concerned for them. The Packers were able to move up and down the field in spurts during the game, but overall, Green Bay's offense, I still just I can't trust them fully yet. They're a great team, great defense. A lot of good young players on that team, but right now it's just like Jordan Love. He's a fantastic quarterback, very talented. Love watching him play. The only thing about him is that it's not consistent play. He's got to get to a point where it's got to be consistent, especially about to enter the playoffs. And more likely than not, they're going to be playing the Rams or the Bucks in the first round. So, it's going to have to be. He's going to have to get to a place where deliver. He has to sustain drives, and keep the chains moving, ahead of third down, and making sure that they're sustaining those long opening drives, not getting 3 and outs and things like that. That's what is going to be key for the Packers when they get into the playoffs. Now, as I said before, I honestly don't see Minnesota or Green Bay going very far. Like at the end of the day, Detroit is the best team in the NFC, and I have them coming out to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. That's just the name of the game. But that's not to say that there are teams who can't, who can challenge that. Like the Vikings. See, the thing is, though, next week, the Vikings and the Lions are going to play in Ford Field, and that game is going to determine who gets the number 1 seed and home field advantage in the playoffs in the NFC. So that's going to be a huge matchup. I'm really looking forward to see how that goes, because even with all their injured players on defense and, some on offense too, David Montgomery being one of them, the Lions have still been able to win games, and they play tonight on Monday Night Football against a 49ers team that this isn't their year. They've been injured. They got stuff going on with them. And so this is a chance for them to really put out another butt whooping on the team and just see what they got and get those other defensive players more reps, continue to get them more and more reps. But they still found ways to win. And teams like that they're going through this adversity there. You got players lost to injury and things like this. They're still finding ways to win, right? And that's going to be the key. You still got to find ways to win. You got to find ways to get stops, get those sacks, try to pressure the quarterback, get those stops on third down, all those things, right? And they've been able to do that, still, despite missing all these players on defense. And it's just huge for them. And I've been very impressed by the Detroit Lions, and now it sounds like I'm glazing them, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. This is the best the franchise has been in years, and the fans have been waiting for this for a long time, possibly a Super Bowl trip. I think this team is better than it was last year when they played against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. The only thing that concerns me with Detroit is if they make it to that game, the type of decisions that Dan Campbell makes. Is he going to gamble? Is he going to make those type of coaching decisions again? It cost him last year. It's like one of those things where, hey, you do it and it works. It's like everybody's like, oh, yeah, man, that's a great call. But it's like if it doesn't, it's like, why would you do that, bro? It's one of those things. It just depends on the result, and then that will determine the reception of the said coaching decision, right? So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing with Detroit. But, as far as like other teams are concerned, like I said, the Packers, they're there. They're not there yet fully, but they're getting there, and if the offense could just be consistent throughout the whole game. Josh Jacobs is an awesome running back. He's really good. Now, when they get into the playoffs, the plan for them might be to run a little bit more than what they've been doing, and I think that would be a smart idea. Set that play action up for Jordan Love, who was a good quarterback off the play action, and see if you can get that going down there, get the ball to your speedsters and Jaden Reed, get it to Dontavius Wicks, and that's what the game plan ought to be for Green Bay, as they get into the postseason. But overall, like I said, it was a good matchup and kind of a good way to see, like, man, the NFC North, minus the Bears, have been really good. It's been really good this year. It's been one of the best divisions in football, as 3 of those 4 teams have 10-plus wins, and they're going to be in the playoffs. So it's just really cool to see that. Now, on the flip side, in the other side of the NFC, going to be talking about NFC South and the Falcons and the Commanders played last night in the game that the Falcons, it was basically like, hey, you win and you're in the playoffs type of deal. For the Commanders, they clinched it, their playoff spot with the win last night. They won. And honestly, dude, it was a really good game. It was a very great game, 27-24 final score. It was an awesome game. Or was it? I think it was a final score. I have to check. Hold on. Let me check real quick. Make sure I got that final score right, because I don't want to mislead here. But like I said, that was a great game. I watched all of it last night. I mean, heck, I hate the bonehead coaching decisions Raheem Morris was making with the timeouts. But, about things like, why are you letting the clock tick down like 20, 30 seconds? Like, when you have to, it doesn't make any sense. But it's okay, because now it's like, hey, the Falcons know what they have in Michael Penix Jr., and that's the most important thing. Like you have your quarterback of the future right here. It's 30-24, my bad. The Commanders scored to end the game. So, yeah. But in overtime. Still think the NFL should give both teams a chance to score in overtime. But, they're never going to change that rule. Michael Penix played good. Threw his first NFL touchdown pass last night. Jay Daniels had over 100 rushing yards. He was killing the Falcons, in those rush lanes. They got to him a couple of times, but overall, and at the end of the day, the way football works, like other sports, mainly in football, especially at the NFL level, like if the other team has more talent than you, if they out-talent you, then you're not going to win the game. That's as simple as that. Football is a game where it's like, at the end of the day, like, the team that has the more talent will 95% of the time win the game, when it's all said and done, because that's just where it goes. Like, you have to have good players, great players to win big games, and that's because those great players are going to make those big plays, and if the other team here, if they just out-talent us by 2 or 3 guys, then it's like, that makes a huge difference. And I think the Falcons were out-talented last night. They played great, but at the end of the day, the Commanders just had those guys that stepped up in spots that the Falcons didn't have guys to do so in, and that's just what happened at the end of the day, and they were making the defensive stops they needed to make when they needed to make them. The Falcons did too, some spurts, but they didn't at other times as well. So at the end of the day, like, they're just going to have to get those talented players in the building. They need to fully, set the tone there, especially on the defense side of the ball. They got great players. Caden Ellis, AJ Terrell played really good, locking up Terry McLaurin last night. He didn't have a catch for 5 yards, I believe, and he wasn't targeted many times either. Jesse Bates, we know what he does. He's an all-pro, Pro Bowl safety. And Grady Jarrett, stalwart from the defensive line. But other than that, I mean, the Falcons just have kind of pick and plug players, and they really need to evaluate what they have this offseason, because I'm looking forward to seeing them doing that. And this coaching staff has got a lot of work to do as well. But on the Commanders side, great game for them. They're in the playoffs now, and, we'll see how they do. At the end of the day, again, all these, they have to get through Detroit. And I just don't believe that any of these other NFC teams can beat the Lions. I just don't think they can, unless Detroit just, falters and, just makes those bad decisions that that played them in last year's playoffs. But other than that, I don't see any team in the NFC taking down the Lions, especially at Ford Field. If they get home field advantage, if they win next week against the Vikings, throughout, they get the first round bye and they get home field advantage, it's over, man. The Vikings are going to go to the Super Bowl. But, hey, there's teams that can challenge them, though. Like I said, you got the Rams could make a push, even though their defense is spotty. I know this, but they can still make a push. This is a team that has been in these situations where they've been in the playoffs. They've been in Super Bowls within the last 5 or 6 years. So Sean McVay is a very experienced head coach. Talk about this on my other podcast. The Vikings clearly have a very talented team. It's just, they aren't fully there yet. They aren't fully there yet, but they will be there soon. Packers, same kind of deal. So the Lions right now just seem like the most complete team in the NFC. You still have the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is out with a concussion. Don't know when he's going to come back. That's going to be a factor. I mean, and Tampa Bay, if they get in, things like that. They're good, but again, it's I just don't trust any of them to beat the Lions, especially in Detroit. So that's just what the case is when the dust settles. Can you go in there in Ford Field in that Rocket Stadium, and can you take down a very high potent offense, and score against a injury riddled defense, which some teams have not been able to do. Yet again, like I said, they've had a lot of starters out on the defense side of the ball. It hasn't mattered. They still been winning games, put up 30 plus points. So that's what it's going to have to come down to for the NFC side. AFC, Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, we know the deal, how it is. Again, same thing. You're going to have to go through Kansas City at the end of the day. I don't trust Lamar Jackson to go into Kansas City and beat the Chiefs. I really don't. I don't think he can do it because they haven't proved it yet. Josh Allen, now there's a chance that he could, and the Bills, because they did prove this year when they played Kansas City at home. That was at home, though, but I mean, it seemed like they had a specific game plan of how they wanted to play against Kansas City. That was different in the past. It's probably the best game they played against the Chiefs in their little rivalry over the last 4 or so years. They go in there with that in that matchup with that same game plan, that mentality that they had. There's a chance they could beat Kansas City. But again, I'm not going to bet against the Chiefs, especially at Arrowhead. So, I mean, I'm still sticking with my Super Bowl picks of the Lions and the Chiefs. May end up being wrong, but that's kind of what I see right now. So, that's just kind of how it is. But that's pretty much all I had to say for today's episode of Jay's Fifth Down, guys. Thank you for listening and watching, depending on however you're checking us out here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Check us out there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify as well. Follow us, Jay's Fifth Down Pod, ! And follow us on the socials on Instagram, X, TikTok. We'll see you next time on the show.